Hi, we're going to do the hidden pond today, so I hope you like to do this one and paint along with me. Okay, these are the colors we're going to be using today, and you guys can put a little notation by each one if you think you might get them mixed up. This is white, of course, and we've got raw sienna. This one's perylene red. Here is some ultramarine blue. We have some Payne's gray. We have sap green. We've got ultramarine violet, and we've got some raw umber. And these are Permalba oils. So those are the brands that I'm going to be using today. And let's run through our brushes. This is my brushes, and this one is the large brush. This one is the background brush. It's about a size 12 and a flat bristle. And then this one is the small background, and it would be about a size 6. And also in a fan brush, in a bristle brush, you need the fan. Any size is okay on that, I think. And then get a little flat sable. We might be using that some. This one's a size 8. And then you need a liner. So there's your brushes. If you've got those 5, that's my basic set, and that's what we'll be using today. Okay, let's start our sky, and I'm going to be using my background brush. And I'm going to brush mix my colors, so if you can, I'm going to try to hold it up here where you can see what I'm doing. But when I brush mix, you want to just pull the paint off on the bottom corner of your brush. Just kind of pull it off and then put it over here somewhere where you can mix into it. And you guys back there can see it in the TVs up high. And then this is a blue-gray. Catch just a little bit of ultramarine blue and put in there, and also just a little touch of Payne's gray. Now these colors are really, really strong, so you don't want to get too much of them there. It'll be too dark. If you do get too much, then just pick up a little more white and add in, so you've got kind of a soft blue-gray. Kind of a pretty color for your sky, and that's all we need for right there. And then I'm going to use just a little touch of medium. That's the medium out here. This is liquid glaze I'm working with, but liquid's fine, just something that's going to thin your paint a little bit. And then come in on the bottom corner of your brush and give it a little scoop to the side. And you can vary your colors a little bit. If it looks too dark, pick up more white, and just, I do a lot of color adjusting right on the canvas. So sometimes you can't tell exactly what you want down here on the palette. You think it's good, but then when you come up here, it's either too light or too dark, and you can adjust right on the canvas. You could even add just a little touch of ultramarine violet to this sky. That would be pretty. If you like lavender tones, a little of that's good. And when I come down in this middle part, leave unpainted some general area for your clouds. So as you're painting, don't get too carried away and cover up the whole thing. You want to leave some unpainted so we can get our clouds in there a little easier. So we're going to work on over here to the side. And if your paint feels too dry, add some medium. But now if it gets too thin, you know, where it looks real transparent looking or wet, that's too much medium. Come on in the bottom part of your sky. Now this top line right here, though, that's your tree line, kind of a general area for your tree line. And I'm going to cut just a little bit more blue back into this weeping willow tree. Instead of stopping exactly at the line, I'm going to pull that over just a little bit. Because last time I painted this, I decided it looked better and the weeping willow tree looked less solid if you allowed just a little bit more of the blue to work into it there. And I'm coming down to the tree line and then past it just a little bit. Don't stop exactly at the line. When you come in with your background tree colors, they're going to come up over the sky a little bit. So let's just pull the sky down a little bit further, and then you'll still have some sky showing up there after the trees are done, hopefully. At least that's the plan. Now I've left some unpainted area. That'll give me a place to start on the clouds. We won't fill that area in exactly, but it'll just give us a little area to start. So when it looks something like this, then you can stop on that part of your sky. Okay, when you think your blue is all done, then clean your brush. Turp it out with your odorless turp. And dry it out well, because your brushes are going to hold the turf, and you want to get all that moisture out of there so it's not going to be runny with the next color. And now I'm going to pick up white again with just a tiny bit, just a tiny touch of raw sienna. Now these colors are strong again, and when I say a tiny touch, I mean barely tap into the corner of the paint with the corner of the brush. So you're just barely tinting that white. It's not a strong color at all. Work it into the bottom corner of your brush. Now watch this, because I'm going to come in here with the bottom corner of the brush. Start in the area that you left unpainted. I hate to tell you, but that's probably not going to work. No, I'm not going to do it. I'm just seeing it.
Does that do any? Can you see this one better?
Yeah.
Just a little more. You can have a little bit more yellow in some of it, a little less in some areas, but work in the middle that you started, where you laid the paint. Well, start in the unpainted area, and you're going to work out over the blue. Don't just fill in the area you left unpainted. You want to come on out over the blue, so it gets a soft look, cloudy look, soft look. If you lose too much of the blue, you can always put a little bit more back in just to break up your clouds. That's can work like that. Till you get just kind of a soft, pretty sky. Everybody's sky is going to look different. Like that. It's okay to see some texture of the paint. Don't try to smooth everything down until it looks so smooth you can't see any texture. I like to see some texture. It makes it look more interesting, I think. Now, getting some paint on there and leaving it without just working it to death is the trick. If you can keep from working it to death. Some skies turn out better than others. But see, I'll come back, and I've kind of lost some of my blue, so I can come back and put a little bit more in there. But just try not to keep blending it. This is going to look dark. Don't want to. Sometimes you can see more raw umber. Maybe the next time I'd pick up a little more raw umber. Next time maybe a little more sap green. Work on the bottom of the brush. And let's start down here at the bottom. Just kind of get it darker at the bottom where it's going to be down against those other next tree row. I've got quite a bit of raw umber in there. You can see all that brown in there. So that's the raw umber. So let's go a little more to the raw umber than too much green. You don't want a greeny green. And again, this is kind of that same stroke we were using in the sky, only it's just a little bouncy kind of a stroke that slightly scoots to the side. We've got a large bush, well, it's really trees. It's kind of bushy trees area over here to the far left. Same thing. Sometimes if it looks a little bit lighter where your paint's pulled out thinner, that's fine. It's okay. Do that. And as I come up here toward the top, I'm going to pick up just a little bit of white. So I'm going to lighten that top where it's against the skyline, or actually you can pick up a little bit of the sky color. May not need to add any white if you've got enough sky mix there, because as I work over that sky, you're picking up that blue-white. Try to get these trees a little uneven. A little more interesting to be uneven, look a little bit more natural. But think of tree foliage against the skyline. Some of it's taller, some of it's shorter. And then it just kind of fades down into these darker values where we started. If it looks too gray, you've probably got more Payne's gray in it than you need. Add a little bit more of the sap green or raw umber. And your color can vary because trees are not all one color anyway. We want some areas darker and some lighter, and you know, we're still going to have a light value on top of this, so this isn't the final thing. This is our base coat. But with oil paints, you normally start with your dark colors first, so. And when I pick up the paint, just vary it a little bit. Sometimes more green, sometimes more raw umber, sometimes a little more Payne's gray. Any of these colors are fine in there, and just kind of loosely mix them. Just dip around. I give it that little bounce. Again, I'm on the bottom corner of the brush. It's the bottom corner. And that just a little slight scoop to the side is kind of like I'm whipping eggs or something. It's a little whippy stroke. It keeps it from looking like you're just pulling it across. Makes it look softer. Okay, now that would be what I would call my base coat here. So I'll come around and see what you've got. We're going to be doing that with these trees. See, these are going to be darker at the bottom and lighter at the top, and then this next area is going to have the same thing. The little shrubbery, groups of shrubbery are going to be darker at the bottom with lighter values at the top, and that's making them stand away from each other. So that's what we're going to try to do anyway. You can, once you get that in there, like kind of get it started there, then you can pick up more sap green with a little bit of white, and just to keep it from being too green, I like to add just a little touch of raw umber to it, or you could actually use a little bit of raw sienna. Maybe raw sienna probably is the best. Sap green and white with just a little touch of raw sienna, and that gives it kind of a dullish green. Yeah, that's not quite light enough. I'm looking for that real lighter value, that real soft green. I needed, yeah, a little bit more white in it. Kind of have to play with your color and adjust it so it's a little bit greener, but not too greeny green. White, sap green, a little touch of raw sienna. Sometimes just a little touch of ultramarine blue in it is nice too. Kind of dulls the color down a little bit. So you're patting a little bit of this green in with the bottom corner of the brush. It's just kind of little bouncy strokes. Yeah, that's about the color I want. So that was sap green and white, a little touch of raw sienna, and a little tiny touch of blue. It's a pretty good color.
Can we see what it looks like on your palette?
Yeah.
Now hold that up for the camera.
Well, okay, here's the color. It's right about like that. See, sap green, Get some white in it, that lightens it down. Add a little touch of ultramarine blue. That was too much ultramarine blue. Get some more white in it. And maybe just a little tap of raw sienna. See, that dulls the color. There it is, I think. That's pretty close. Try it on yours. If it's too dark, just add more white. White will always lighten something up. And we want it so it's a soft green without being a real green.
Sort of like a gray green?
It's kind of, just move it around. And that gives some nice foliage shapes. You can put foliage in with lots of different brushes. Like weeping willow trees. We'll be doing that on the weeping willow tree. This is, yeah, this is sideways. And check this corner right in here. This is a real dark area. Look at your picture. You'll see a lot of dark right there. If you're not dark enough, we won't have good contrast between these front bushes and these back ones. So you could take whatever brush you want to use, it doesn't matter. And just add maybe some more Payne's Gray and raw umber in that area. Now you may be okay. Just look at your picture and see if you think you're dark enough there for a nice strong contrast. Because colors can be adjusted forever, so we're just working with light and dark values. I'm going to tap a little more foliage up here in the sky with my fan brush till I feel like I'm probably getting enough. We're going to have some little tree trunks and limbs coming up through, especially this bigger group of foliage that's kind of right in there. But we can wait and do that after we get some more foliage in. Then we'll put in all of our little tree trunks and stuff. Okay. All right, we're going to go ahead and block in this next grouping of trees back here. These are kind of bushy type trees. I don't know if they're bushes or trees, doesn't matter. They're shrubbery of some sort. We're going to start with the same thing, same dark. You can use your raw umber, Payne's Gray. You can throw a little ultramarine blue in it, a little sap green, anything that looks dark. And you can have just a little bit of medium in it because that stretches the paint out and keeps it from going on too thick. Anytime you're doing a base coat, folks, you've got to keep that paint relatively thin. And by thin, I don't mean wet thin. I just mean stretched out paint so you don't have a heavy base coat of dark. Because your dark colors just will take over if you've got too much heavy paint there. So we want it to look dark, but just not be thick paint. That's what I'm trying to say. But all of this area is just blocked in. Come over close to that big weeping willow. I'm going to pretty well come up to the top here. I'll save a little bit of a line there so I can put some lighter colors in there and won't lose the shape of these particular bushes.
I feel like I need some cadmium yellow medium in here.
Do what?
I feel like I need some cadmium yellow medium in here.
No, it's going to get too bright yellow if you introduce that brightest
Do that, huh?
color, yeah. Now all of this is, of course, our darker value, but I've got a little bit of, well, quite a bit actually of the sap green in there. Yeah, these colors were so soft back here that I didn't use cad yellow medium, which I do use a lot. But I wanted to get that really muted, soft, kind of hazy green. And cad yellow medium is so strong that it really, it won't give you that hazy color. Yeah. So there's,
I keep saying, hey, that's
there's your base coat. And then I'm going to start out the same way with this one, just picking up with the bottom corner of this brush. Or if that brush feels big, you could go to your smaller background brush to start this foliage, if that would be a little less frightening, I don't know. But when you got your dark on there, again, you're going to go into sap green and white and a little bit of your raw sienna, maybe a touch of the blue. Same general colors you was using back here for your light greens. And you could tap with the side of this smaller brush if you want to go that route. This foliage will kind of come up above the line. Now there's no hard edges in foliage, and there's no you don't want to get little round ball patterns. Try to loosen it up to some extent, make it look natural. Heavier paint works better, and again, try different brushes to see whatever works the best for you. You can try your fan brush again. You can use the bigger brush if you'd rather. It gives you a nice soft look. But we're just tapping in some foliage and then still letting a lot of this darker value show. I may still need some more raw umber down here. You can always put in some more dark if you need it. Dark belongs toward the bottom of the shrubbery. Lighter greens toward the top where the light's hitting it. Don't be stingy with your paint on the highlights. You got to have a lot of paint on there, no matter what brush you're using. Then I've got little groups of foliage that's coming on down in here too. All of this is not one big group from top to bottom, so you can see I've got other sectioned it off in with light values. And we're going to have some pink flowers in here eventually. Foliage is always hard for people, but it's getting those values in there that keeps it from looking like it's flat. That's important. I'm going to leave some areas for the pink so that you don't have to cover everything up here. You're going to have little pink flowers popping in and out. Light in this painting is actually coming from the left. So, if you wanted to tap a little bit more light value on the left side of any of your little groups of foliage, that'd be the place to put it. If you lean the brush over just a little bit and give it just a little bit of a push, it creates that little edge, and that's what people have trouble with, getting the edge. And then letting that fade down into the shadow so it doesn't look like just an abrupt start and stop of highlights. I'm going to leave the light pink flowers for later. We'll put some in over here too when we get those done. But all of this area we can do a little bit more with, and then we'll come back and put our little trunks and so forth in, and the pink flowers. Okay, we've got a little bit of dirt right here, a little bank back here from under the trees down to the edge of the water line. I guess I'll go back to my small background brush for that. It was green, so I'll dip it in my turf and clean it out pretty good. Okay, I'm going to pick up a little white here with just a little bit of raw sienna to start out. Raw sienna and white. And I'm just going to take the brush and just kind of fill this in a little bit, but I'm kind of cutting it a little bit at an angle. and I'm catching into that dark value at the bottom of the bushes and pulling it down into this little bank a bit. So you don't want to see a straight line underneath the bushes. That looks too unreal. So we're letting them look softly blended into the ground back there. It gives it some shadows. Kind of pull those shadows down into the dirt. If you don't have enough shadows to pull, you can reach down and pick up a little bit of raw umber and just kind of scoot a little bit of that in, which we need some of that anyway. We need some raw umber along the bottom edge of the water. Need it to be dark there. And you can kind of scuff that back into the raw sienna and color and your greens if there's some of that there. So you're looking for just kind of a loosely blended bank. And again, if you can kind of keep those angles going a little bit more rather than just straight back and forth, it gives it a better slope to the ground. And once you get that in there, then just take a little bit of, kind of pick up a little bit more white, just a little bit, and just kind of give it some little flicks of light in there and then get out of it and it'll be done. Don't blend it to death, as we all like to do. If a little blending is good, a whole lot more surely is better, and if not, we just think it will be. Once you've kind of got your little bank in here, I'm going to take my liner and go ahead and add some of these little tree trunks and limbs back in here. We don't want to get too many because that gets to looking too busy. And when you work with a liner, put some turp in it and thin your paint down with your brush. I'll see if I can lift it up here where you can see a probably drip. I'm going to use my raw umber and I'm thinning it with brush cleaner instead of medium. Use your turp and get it about the consistency of ink, and then you should be able to get a nice line with it. So use a light touch, and I kind of stay way back on my liner so that my hand isn't heavy down there at the bottom. Don't hold it like a pencil. Hold way back. See, I'm holding as far back as I can go. And some of these little branches are going to be a little thicker toward the bottom, and then they'll thin out and, be real light value. Don't push hard with your liner unless you expect to have a heavier line. Right on the tip of the brush for the little delicate bits of line work that you might want to see back there. And we can always come back with a little highlight foliage and knock some of it out, put some more little branches over, or little groups of foliage over the lines, over the trunks. So I'll do those few.
I do better after it's dry so I can lay my hand down.
Yeah, you can do that. You know, if you really feel like you can't do it while it's wet, there's nothing wrong with waiting until it's dry and putting them in. I'm just in too big a hurry always. I want to see it done right now. Time to wait. But anytime you put one in you don't like, let's say I don't particularly like that one right there, I just come back and knock it out, just tap it out. No big deal. Or you could come back with your fan brush and tap a little bit more highlight across the limbs, like I was saying. Kind of just tap it across here and there, and that kind of puts your branches back inside the tree instead of looking like they're all on this side of the tree. And again, just kind of be sparse with them. Put a few in there, makes it look like trees, but quit before you get too many, and of course it's hard to know when that is. Sometimes it's a good idea to step away from it, get back about 6 to 8 feet. Look at your painting from the distance that most people would view it as they come into the room. Your painting has to carry, what they call carry. The light and the darks and the values have to carry across the room so that you don't have to feel like you have to get right up against it to see the colors and the shapes of things. Okay, that's probably plenty of little branches and trunks. Don't do this. I see people doing limbs like this and little trees like this a lot because they don't know where to go. So they come up here and they put one in, and then they put one over here, and then they go right across the tree and put one over there, and there's one here and there's one here. And then they put one here and one here and one here and one here till they get a broom out here. So you want to be more, you know, get them more scattered and get that those little limbs coming away in different places. Be, you know, kind of work them so that they're not all coming into one spot. That's all I know about that.
That's quite a bit. That's all you know about that?
That's all I know. And, you know, sometimes I'll come back and put a little bit of highlight on some of the limbs. You could touch just a little raw sienna and white. And if you're going to highlight them, don't highlight right on top of the dark. Put it next to the dark. If you put it right on top of the dark, you lose the dark and, you know, you painted it out. But little bits of color on your tree trunks, especially if they're a little bit bigger ones, looks good. Gives it a little shape. But again, you lay it next to the dark. Sometimes if it's an area that's just nearly all totally dark, just put your limbs in with a light color. You don't have to do dark first. It wouldn't show up anyway. And so,
My number's not showing up right
yeah, so you could come back in with raw sienna and white in the dark areas. Would look better. You can always come back and soften edges and, you know, do little touch-ups at any time. Just because you leave an area and move on to something else doesn't mean you can't come back and work on that same area again at another time. You can paint on a painting forever until you varnish it, and once you varnish it, you're done. You can't paint on top of the varnish. Paint would crack off eventually. Okay, that's pretty well got our background in, and so that's where we should be at this point in time. We're going to come up then to our next step, and we're going to do this little bush of foliage and flowers right down here. So go back to your big brush. If you've got your larger brush, this is the one that we want to use now. Let me adjust my camera over here just a little bit so we can see it better. All right, again, it's like the others. We're basing it in with a dark base coat. That's Payne's Gray. I'm going to have some raw umber in here. Little sap green would look good, or some blue. When I'm looking for a dark value, I just kind of pick up anything that looks dark on my palette. Just kind of mix them loosely together as I paint. And that way you get a little bit of variation. And I'm just going to paint all the way up to the top. We can tell where this bush is. We don't have to wonder. We'll see it. No need to leave a line there, I don't think. And this bush does come down into the edge of the water there. See, you've got about an inch drop away from the bank back here at the back. So there's your base coat on that. Yeah, when you use the big brush, it goes fast. And the more you paint, the faster you get too. I mean, you know, I don't expect students to paint as fast as I do, because I'm supposed to lead the way here, so I get mine done and then you can do yours. Well, the top of this bush, of course, is going to be lighter. And then we're going to leave some room for our pink flowers down in this middle portion down in there somewhere. So once you get your base coat in, then the next step will be to go back to our greens. I'll come up here so you can see it a little bit better. I'm picking up my sap green, a little bit of white, maybe a touch of raw sienna sometimes looks good in it and kind of dulls it down a bit. So my sap green up there seems a little dry. Anyway, load it up pretty good, and then the paint will be on the top of the brush when you turn it over. Remember, you're pushing away from you, and then your paint will be on the top corner then. And I'm going to start at the top of the bush. In fact, I'm starting a little bit above it. I want to make it lighter all along this edge here. That will hopefully pull it away from what's back here. We may have to go back and adjust the dark, put more dark on this back bush back there. That sometimes has to be done for the sake of contrast. You have to reload your brush fairly often on this because I want quite a bit of paint on the brush as I do this highlight stuff. So you're coming in, you're pushing that paint off right on those edges. Try to get it kind of uneven. Uneven is always better than even. And I see areas where I'm going to have to darken my background a little bit more. Sometimes you just don't know where to put that dark until you work on your more forward areas, and then you see where you have to go back and make adjustments. Now see, the light side right here is what I'm talking about. Let me show you right here, because this area and this area here are so close to the same color. I would correct that by picking up a little bit of the burnt umber, or raw umber it is, raw umber, maybe a touch of the Payne's Gray, and darken this bush behind. Now watch this one pop away from it. See what I'm talking about? Sometimes you have to do stuff like that as you paint, because you don't always put everything just exactly where it should go. We don't know where it should go sometimes till you get something in the front. So now that's going to separate these two. This bush is closer to us than these back here. So we've got to show some contrast. And then again, see, I'm coming in with that brush and pushing it over a little bit and creating an edge to another cluster of foliage. Get it light on the edge. And keep loading up your paint, because it doesn't take long to run out of paint when you're doing this. And then I'll just kind of put little suggestions of color back in this back area here, because we're still going to have some pink flowers in here. And let's see, my camera's kind of off of it right here. Let's go up a little bit. There it is. Okay, now so you can see what I did. I went back and darkened this just a little bit. Now when you put the dark back here, don't make it look like you just laid in a row of dark. It has to kind of soften back into that bush. But that created the separation that we needed. Light area here against a dark area back there. And then it works. It will work. Let's add our flowers so we can have some pretty. Now the flowers, I load the fan brush exactly the same way I was loading for all the green leaves. This is going to be white and the perylene red. Just kind of mix it, you know, the more white you have in it, the lighter, obviously, the flowers will be. You're looking for just a soft pink. And sometimes I added a little bit of the violet in there too. And if you don't have a violet, you can mix the ultramarine blue and the perylene red and add some white, and you'll have violet that way as well. But anyway, see, I'm loading again like I'm pushing away from me. And the paint's on the top right corner of the brush. And let's see, I'm going to start over here. My little brush handle comes up like this because I want to at least push my flowers off like this. So you change the angle of the brush so that I'm still working on that right corner, but I've just flipped the brush over. And work little taps of color to create your flowers. Some of them can have a little bit more white. If you want them to pop out just a little bit more, just a touch more white on some is good. Got some over there. Maybe there could be a few in here somewhere. Little bushes of flowers. We don't know what kind, other than pink. And there's a few over here. Scatter them around, but, you know, kind of don't overkill on them. Might be enough over there. Sometimes less is better than more, you know. And add just a little purple on some of these over here. Kind of go with the angle of the bush instead of going straight across. We don't want to put them in rows. That wouldn't look natural. It's a pretty color. I need some purple ones over here too, since I put some purple on those. Some pink. And kind of make them look like they kind of hang over there a little bit with the angle of the bush. Keep plenty of paint on the brush. If you don't have enough paint, they start mushing. We don't want mushy flowers. It's that little flick with the brush, flicking the paint off the top of the bristles. That might be enough flowers. Maybe a few more right there. That's enough. Quit while you're ahead. See where I might add just another one or two is kind of up in here, so everything doesn't look like it's kind of in a little circle. Okay, let's paint our water, and I'm going to use this big brush. Now, when you paint water, folks, you want to put in the dark values first, and then I'm pulling everything in going down. Don't put anything in, don't put it in going across other than just putting a little dark line under your banks and so forth. But we're going to put everything in going down, and then last we'll do a little distortion of those downward lines by going across. So I'm going to start out with some of the dark values that we've been using. And I'm picking up a little sap green and a little raw umber, maybe a little bit of Payne's gray. Just again, it's kind of making those dark mixes. When I load that brush, I just kind of pick up from this one and maybe that one and this one over here, and you just get a nice dark value. And I'm going to start right under the bank. Now this goes across just as I'm laying that in. I want that just maybe a little bit more to the raw umber back here. I don't want it too greeny. And then you can use the flat of the brush, or once in a while I may turn it sideways, but mostly I'm just using the flat. And I want this to be, again, quite a bit of raw umber. I'm going to darken it down just a little bit more. Now, right in the center, notice where your light areas are going to be. Look at your picture and you'll see that there's going to be light area down in here, so don't pull your dart down that far. Come right up against this little bush. Oh, this is little downward strokes. Try to make it uneven. Try not to make it even as you pull it down into this bush area. Downward strokes. Over here against here, and not under where the weeping willow tree is going to be is quite dark. Back this up a little bit so you can see it better. Like I said, some of it looks a little browner, some of it looks a little greener. Get a little variation even with the dark. When I get about that much done, set it up here a little bit. Dark coming on down here. Now you can see where I set the brush down and stuff, that's going to come out, so don't worry about that. Don't try to just keep blending it. It doesn't need to be that smooth. About that much for your dark. Make sure your strokes are going straight down too. Don't pull them off to the side. Make sure they go straight down. That makes your reflections look like they're coming straight down in the water. Pick up some white and a little bit of your ultramarine blue.
Did you clean your brush?
I did. Clean your brush first, yeah. And then pick up white. Now this is going to be a light value. Don't get it too dark. White and ultramarine blue. You might add just a touch of Payne's gray to it too. It keeps it from being quite so blue. And I'm going to start, now notice where I'm going to start with this. I'm not going to put it right in the dark. I'm starting kind of below the dark. Check your color and see if it looks about right. And then I'm stroking that in, and then watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to reach up and catch into the dark so that you're kind of loosely working these colors together. It kind of picks up some of that greeny brown color and grays it down. And again, these colors just loosely come together. Hopefully. We don't want to blend it to death. Don't worry about your strokes showing. We want them to show. You know, where you set the brush down looks kind of streaky, gives you a little flat line there. Don't worry about it. It all comes out when we brush across. Ultramarine blue and white, maybe a speck of Payne's gray in there too. And I'm going to leave just a little bit open in the very center if I can. There's going to be a little highlight in there that I think I'll leave just a little area open. This bigger brush makes this go really, really quick on your water and blends it better too than a small brush would. Kind of move it around and just work those colors so see how it looks streaky. The dark looks like it's just kind of streaking down into the light. And again, don't worry about brush strokes. They're desirable for this. Still left a little area in the center. If for some reason you didn't leave an area, you've covered it in, don't worry about it. You can still get some light in there. I've got just a little bit more extra light there. Again, that was white, ultramarine blue with just a little bit of Payne's gray added to make a nice blue-gray. And then right here in the center, you could use your fan brush for this, or a brush, just another different clean brush. I picked up white and just a little touch of raw sienna, so you've got a little bit of off-white. And come right in the middle. I'm just doing this with my fan brush. I'll thin the paint down just a little bit more. And then you put that in the light spot. But I'm pulling, watch my brush. See, I'm taking some of the blue and working into it at the sides so you don't have any lines. You want no lines left between colors, you know, definite lines. See, and that worked it out, and you've got a little bit of a light glow there in the middle to reflect some of your clouds and sky.
What color did you use?
White with just a touch of raw sienna. Right in here. And you walk back and forth with your downward strokes till you kind of soften all those edges out. When we do that willow tree, this is so dark under it, you can hardly tell where the tree stops and the water starts. It all kind of really goes into shade up there. Very, very dark. Over here under these little bushes, it's really dark too. Once you've done enough water, you kind of know where to pull the darks. You know, you look up here and see what would reflect in the water and pull this down. This is kind of getting it started. We can come back and reflect some other things if we want to. But once you've got this dark pulled down and you feel like it's kind of set together, watch what I'm going to do next. I'm going to wipe my brush off. Well, I'm going to clean it. I've got really a lot of dark in it. Dry it out really well, and I'm going to pick up just a little bit of white and maybe that raw sienna and white color, just simply to have something in the brush. If you come up here with a damp brush, it's going to clean the paint right off the canvas. So I've just got a little bit of paint in the brush. Now I'm going to go back and forth lightly. Sometimes I use the whole fan of the brush like that, see, back and forth very, very lightly. All I want to do is distort the downward lines a little bit. Sometimes I turn the brush sideways and cut little more skinny lines across, little ripples in the water. You want to do this before this paint gets dry, so you don't want to delay too long in doing this, because it's pulled out thin, it begins to get dry on you and then it won't move. But now we're not scrubbing it across. Be careful, because sometimes people come into this step and they just start scrubbing back and forth. They lose all of the downward lines, so their water looks flat. You want just enough movement across the downward lines to distort them. So a lot of this is done with more the side of the brush than the flat of the brush. You'll pull a little bit of the light into the dark and some of the dark into the light, and you get that little distortion going on that makes it look shiny. And I do what I can like that with fan brush, and sometimes I'll come back with like the detail flat or something, a little flat brush, and do some more little back and forth distortion lines with a smaller flat just very loosely. Get some little ripples in the water. And keep all your strokes going back and forth straight with the bottom of the canvas. That way it's going to look right and it won't look like your water's running out of the picture. Sometimes doing these little strokes with your small brush, you pick up some of the paint and actually expose some of the canvas underneath it, but it looks okay. Looks good to do it like that, actually. You can do as much of this little wiggly stuff as you want. Pick up a little pink in the fan and just stroke down under the bushes. Just stroke in some pink and then wiggle across, and there's your reflection of the flowers. Anything that you see above the water will probably reflect in the water. So color-wise, you know, look up. I'm going to put a little pink in here, maybe some over here. Just a little bit, and then go across again. See, after you got that initial blending going across, that doesn't necessarily mean you're through, because you can come back and reflect more color in the water. Wherever you see an area that think this looks altogether too dark, put a little light green or pink or something in it, and then distort it again. Kind of soften my shoreline back there against the little bank. And then you want to quit just before you get too carried away with your streaks and blending in the water. And of course, that's hard to know when that is. You usually know it later after you've done too much. You want it enough to look like it's there, but not enough that it just takes over the picture and looks too stripy. But anything you put in that you don't like, you can sweep it out going down. So, you know, nothing's forever unless you want it to be. Now we've got water lily pads in the water. We'll do those last. So once you get your water done, or your movement in it and reflections and everything, we'll move on to the weeping willow tree. The scary weeping willow tree. Okay, I'll probably go ahead and use my big brush. It's just handy, and it covers the ground quickly and soft. It'll look softer than a smaller brush. So I'm cleaning the blue out of it. It's got blue watercolor in it. I'll get that out of there for the most part. All right, it, like the other bushes, is going to start with a dark base coat. And if you can be a little bit more open in some of these areas, like up in here where my sky comes over into the tree quite a bit, that looks good. There's going to be an area here where this is all kind of hanging down a little unevenly, but I see an area right in here I'm probably going to need to darken again, but I'm going to leave it like it is. It may work itself out. But we need the base coat with dark. I'm picking up the sap green and the raw umber and the Payne's gray mixture again. I'm going to start up here at the top, kind of working on the side of the brush for the most part. I've kind of got the brush vertical, and so I'm working on the side, make the top kind of uneven over here. And then see, it's beginning to hang down because I have this blue area here. If some of you don't have your sky over there a little further, you could stop and work it over there, maybe. Because I like that openness of the tree. My first one wasn't quite as open as this one, but I like that look better, so we're trying to open it up a little bit. And you want to keep your little strokes going down. See, I'm letting these little branches hang over more uneven and leaving some of that sky showing through. Some of this can come up higher than other places at the top. You don't want it just looking straight across the top. Try to get it more unevenly. But this needs to be pretty dark. I've got some areas darker and some lighter here, which is okay. But get enough really strong dark in there to be your backbone of the dark value. Some of this being greener, a little greener, and other parts being darker. I'm already building up to maybe almost getting two values on here with this pass here on a tree. At the very bottom, your tree is going to be very, very dark, and it looks the same color as the dark in the water. You can hardly tell where the tree stops and the water begins, but that gives you some real strong shadows that will be good back in under your tree. Okay, folks, our light is coming from the left. I've already done it.
Oh, okay. Start over then, because I'm like.
Okay, we're going to highlight our tree, and the light is coming from the left. And the foliage on these trees, you know, kind of hangs in long strands. So that's what we're going to try to make it look like. You want to be careful that you don't lose all of your dark. We still want to see a lot of dark because that's the depth back in the tree. That's the shadows back inside the tree. All we're painting is the light that's on this outside edges and the little strands of it. I'm going to load one flat side of my fan brush, and I'm using sap green and maybe just a little touch of the raw sienna or blue like we did before. Remember the colors we used back in this foliage back here, so same general colors. White, it's got some white in it, sap green, white, a little touch of ultramarine blue, little speck of raw sienna. Loaded up pretty good, so you've got quite a lot of paint, and it's all on one whole flat side. That looks kind of light up there on the screen, but it's not really that light, it's more of a green. I'm going to start up here at the top, and I come in on the side of the brush. My paint now is facing left, and I'm kind of patting. I don't think my color's light enough, so you got to try it and see. I think I need some more white in it. There we go. Tapping with the side of the brush to get my little stringy looking branches coming down. You got to keep a lot of paint on it all the time, so load it up some more once you get through with some strokes, and skip over a little area. Now up here at the top I kind of start on the corner of the brush, but then I'll turn and use the whole brush. And sometimes, watch this, I kind of go back and forth a little bit so you don't just get a big long narrow string. So I make it a little fuller by moving the brush a little bit back and forth. I'm going to zoom that in just a bit so you can see that better. Move it down a little.
I tried, but it just went in the center of the tree.
Okay. And I'm constantly reloading the brush because it doesn't take long to lose all that paint off that outside edge. Now, I try to get a staggered look to my little strands of leaves, so you're not stopping them all in the same place. You don't want them to look like they've been to the beauty shop and had a haircut, and they just go whacked off all even. Make them uneven. Uneven is interesting, even is not.
Let me watch and see how this is happening. I can't
Oh,
see
it's a
very well.
happening thing here.
Clear
See,
back.
there's my paint. So I come in like this. See, I kind of hit it on the bottom, so it kind of rounds it over a little bit. And then I'm coming down like this. See me bounce back and forth a little bit? See, there comes my little strand. And then it's going to fade back into the shadows back here somewhere. And then you can start another one. And kind of stop them uneven. And then load up again. You got to keep lots of paint on there. No paint, no leaves.
You're loading that whole brush.
Like one side only. You don't need both sides. See, this side doesn't have any paint on it. One side only. And then I'm just kind of working it back and forth and bringing it down. I'm going to leave a little bit of dark right there between the tree and these background bushes. And if you need to, because you want this light against a dark background, you can take a little bit of the dark and kind of blur that edge right there, so it doesn't look like those trees just stop suddenly in the distance. Put a little shadow back there, and then this tree's going to show up better. Put a little one over there. See, I'm kind of being uneven with them as I come down. Over in here somewhere you can leave, I've got a pretty much of a dark hole over here. These are kind of tricky trees because real easy they can turn into big green haystacks. Don't stroke your paint. That's where it comes into the haystack business. This is more of a pat. See, that makes it look kind of like little leaves. Those little long thin leaves like the weeping willows have. And they'll come down to the water's edge, but some of them are not coming all the way down. Some will. Some are going to stop up short, so they're not even again. It's hard not to be even. Our natural tendency is to line things up and even them out. Now when you get down here, this can be water. So you can put this down into the water and put some little water lines under it. We don't want a straight line under the tree. You know, we don't want to come down and just chop it off. So we need, and if you get too much of it down, just go back into your dark value on the other side of the brush and take some of it out. It will come and go until you think it's okay. Cut that one off a little bit. And we can add just a little suggestion of a tree trunk or a limb up in through there if you've got a place for it. But that's probably about good. Just so it'll read like a weeping willow tree. You look at it and go, oh, that's a weeping willow tree, instead of what is that thing in the corner of your canvas?
Pile of words.
What is that thing? And I'm coming back with a little bit more white in my mix and putting some shine on it. A little bit more white, greenish white. But you can, you know, come back and do a little fixing. And that whiter color would only be over there where the light's hitting it on the left. Spot there, might add a branch, or you may not have anywhere for a branch. Doesn't matter. If you don't have a place for one, it's okay. If the trees are real full like that hanging by the water, you may not see any branches. They may all be down, you know, inside the trees too much. Inside the leaves. Okay. Okay, I've got with my small brush, the small flat, detail flat, there's some little shiny lily pads, I guess they are, back here in the distance, but the light's hitting them and it makes them look like they're pretty white. And I like the little light, bright area anyway, because it pulls a little light back through here. But this is just a real light green. And you've got several little elongated strokes back here, kind of loose and messy. They don't have to be too perfect or anything. If they just look like shine on the water, that's okay. And since they are little lily pads, I did do just a little touch of pink on some, at least some of them, so they got the little flower going on there. I've got some shine over here against the big tree. Or again, it could be construed as a lily pad with the light on it, but I kind of blurred the edges out of this one. I was just thinking more of a shiny reflection on the water. These are elongated strokes. You're looking at this pond from a kind of a sideways angle, so even down here in the front where we've got more definite lily pads, they're still a little elongated because you're still looking somewhat sideways. And we're certainly not looking straight down at it, so that's when they begin to look more round if you're looking from above straight down, which we're not doing. These little green smudges in the water represent your lily pads. With the occasional little tap of a pink flower. There they are, kind of close up. They're real smudgy. They're not detailed at all. And then coming down into the foreground, down low, in this right-hand corner is a whole bunch of more definite lily pads that are still elongated to some extent. Kind of little rough, loose ovals. Darker greens. Use your green, maybe a touch of raw umber with it. Some of these are pretty dark, more brown than green. But to make them look like they're floating on the water, give them that little oval shape. And then some of them have like a little dark with raw umber, a little edge around the bottom of them. Gives them a little shadow under the water, under the pad, so he looks like he's on the water. Some of them can touch each other. They prefer to touch each other. It's kind of a dark green. A little dark on the bottom of it. And then again, occasionally, you might want a little pink flower. Just a dab of the perylene red and white makes the pink for the flower. Show up, that's over there. When you're doing these lily pads in the foreground, don't make them all in this big circle. People do like to make things in circles in those other classes. Probably you guys wouldn't. Being as how you're such good artists.
Yeah. I'm going to come here just for the compliment.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's enough lily pads. Don't want to lily pad it to death. when you get the lily pads and the shine lines on, for all intents and purposes, you're done. Unless there's something you want to change or fix, which can be easily done. But I think we could call that one finished.